Hi, my name is Jocelyn, and my take on this was public health. My podcast was on SNAP and the reorganiz- reorganization of the Farm Bill. It talks about poverty as a policy problem where government chooses around food assistance have direct consequences on everyday lives. The podcast encourages data-informed compassion policy. Heflin challenges this narrative by framing food insecurities as a system issue influenced by government choices and economic structures. Her approach emphasizes the importance of evidence-based, compassionate policymaking that responds to real data. Heflin supports her argument with robust data sources including administrative SNAP records, national surveys, and longitude studies. These tools allow her to demonstrate how SNAP not only reduces food insecurities, but also contributes to long-term benefits in health, education, and workforce participation.
Hello, my name is Brittany Nicholas, and my podcast that I had to research on was The Roots of Poverty in America by Planet Money. This is a side of poverty because poverty is a huge problem in America. It affects nearly 40 million people that struggle with the rising costs for housing, food, and or healthcare. It's not just a financial burden, it's a reality that impacts people's daily life, with many facing eviction or crushing medical bills. Poverty has been tied to so many, it's been since the beginning of America that it's become a like a regular, people have just accepted it, that they can't get out of it. um, there's experts like Matthew Desmond that argue that poverty is actually a policy choice, meaning that it could be eliminated if the right changes were made. While programs like Lyndon B. Johnson's War on Poverty made a difference, shifts in the job market and issues with the welfare programs made it harder for people to escape poverty. Despite all the money that has been spent on aid, much of it only treats the small parts of poverty rather than fixing the root of the problem. Um, Government policies make it worse instead of better. Tax breaks and housing benefits tend to help the wealthy more than the lower income, which keeps the economic gaps really wide. Zoning laws also play a role in making it harder to build affordable housing, which keeps lower income families stuck in segregated areas. Um, the many barriers that exist can be worked around if there is teamwork, individual actions, political will, and policy reform all will play a role. Uh, if breaking down the bureaucratic obstacles, making financial aid more accessible, and rethinking policies that give unfair advantage to the wealthy are the key steps for begin to get rid of poverty as a whole.
Hello, my name is Nathan. My specific section of this when talking about poverty was in regards to human geography. My podcast was a podcast that was talking, or the interviewer or interviewee in said podcast was a economic geography specialist. She kind of went into the conversation around poverty in relations to gentrification. And so in this interview, she talks about a paper that she did on examples of gentrification in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Um, in general, throughout the entire paper, she uses different buildings as examples that she gives her own specific name to. The one that was pretty prevalent in the interview was a building she named Rochelle. This building used to be kind of used to be an SRO for homeless or low income people. mainly as an in-between place, or just it could also be for recovery purposes of any kind. Um, the purpose of the building was to allow a place for people who might not be able to get um, live anywhere in the rest of the city. What happens, though, in this case of this building, is that a lot of investors, in the name of quote unquote charity, put investments into this building to like change it and make it better, make it more quote unquote modern or new. Um, and then what eventually starts happening is that this place then becomes more desirable for people of higher economic statuses, and so they start moving in, and the people that have been living there for a while end up getting pushed out because rent is higher and just normal gentrification problems. But the main thing that she tackles in this interview and in the paper as well is more so the thought process behind the idea of giving an investment to a location as charity. A lot of people are giving investments who can give investments to different buildings around a city, are doing it to like make their city more desirable, make things more like, I guess, cleaner in some words. This is it perpetuates a language that is negative towards people of lower income brackets, though, because um, you then kind of get this language around like if you can afford this and you can't afford things that are nice, and if like something of lower income is then also deemed not safe or not clean or not worthy of being in the city, then people who would only be able to afford those things are then also associated with those actives and then are pushed out of the city. Um, and so she then also goes into the fake charity conversation around this as well. The idea that people are thinking they're giving back to a community, and when reality, they're just segregating people who do not fit their image of the type of people who should live in a city, whether they realize they're doing it or not. And what's worse is that people who are giving out leases to their tenants are just purely viewing those people as like ways in which to give money. It's always a language around like, oh, well, you just keep giving me this money. Like that's even though you may be of a low income bracket, I still eventually get the money. And that's like literally all that matters to people is whether they can get rent that or get their tenants rent that month. It's a language that very much dehumanizes people who are renting out places. Um, and it fosters this environment where people do not have to care. Um, or investors do not have to care. People who are giving out leases don't really have to care about the people who are renting or buying those places. And it just allows them to raise prices or change things completely so that they can raise prices, which it just plays into the housing market as well. Um, and that is all I have to say on my section.
Hi, I'm Bree, and my section of the poverty discussion is economics. The podcast that I chose or was given is Rethinking by Adam Grant, and he was talking to Esther Duflo, and she made a good comparison by thinking like a plumber in terms of trying to get rid of economic distress. Poverty limits economic growth by reducing access to education, healthcare, and stable employment. When millions of people can't fully participate in the economy, productivity suffers and inevitably inequality grows, which kind of talks or piggybacks off of what Nathan was talking about. But the assumptions we make is that people in poverty can just as harmful as is just as harmful as poverty itself. So the people in poverty are just as harmful as the people in poverty because they get enabled by those cash aids and get comfortable being where they are as opposed to trying to work harder. So there inevitably is this persona of people in poverty are lazy. One common belief is that poverty strips people of their freedom and agency, but in reality, many people living in poverty are active decision makers. They have responsibilities, make good and bad choices, and often navigate extremely complex lives. On the flip side, another assumption is that every poor person in the future is a future billionaire in the making, just waiting to launch their big ideas. But both of those extremes oversimplify reality. The truth is, behaviors are complicated. In the podcast, it shows that people often make decisions based on what others are doing, not just out of the fear of judgment or punishment. But because those behavior signals signal what might be acceptable or desirable, even when people are often unsure of what they really want, and when your options are limited, you can get confused because it's harder to navigate. That's why understanding poverty is so important, not just from a social perspective, but an economic one. Policies like direct cash aid, job training, and equitable access to education don't just help individuals, they strengthen the entire economies by bringing more people into the conversation. So instead of just adding cash and continue to keep giving people money just to help them, we need to also educate them as well so that these communities can grow and continue to work together, sharing knowledge and help one another. But it's about fixing the small things, supporting those in need, and remembering that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, progress is possible when we stay committed to each other. And additional to that, with Esther's comparison of thinking like a plumber, just trying to, as a community, to fix the small things and doing everybody doing their part by, fixing what you can. And if you make a mistake, you learn from that mistake and you continue to keep trying to fix so that we can grow these economies and communities into better living spaces so that we don't have the issues of the public health, causing more issues to where they're either unhealthy or they don't get the resources they need. In additional to what Nathan was saying about how people are getting pushed out of their homes because they don't look or fit the description of people
Hmm.
that should be living there.
I think that with our topics, I feel like Bree's goes along really well with Jocelyn's, and mine goes really well with Nathan's. But all of it really does come together in the end about how poverty ultimately is able to be fixed. We're just not making the right choices to fix it. There's too many mindsets now that go along with the stereotypical poverty that if we take the right steps, we could end this, but it's taking the right steps that won't happen. Um, I'm pretty sure that is everything. Thank you.